Enjoy.
Dramatic two-out ninth-inning home run gives the American team a win over mighty Cuba. Eventually, Team USA would settle for the silver, but American baseball fortunes were on the upswing, and a year later in Seoul, they struck gold. With the Cubans, who would have been favored, boycotting the Olympics, the Americans took the gold medal. Most of the players from that squad have gone professional. Some, like Jim Abbott, are already in the major league. Now, a young, inexperienced group of American players arrives in Havana to take on the Cuban team in what is their national game as well. The Cubans are pointing toward Barcelona in 1992. They're a veteran team featuring quality players like third baseman Omar Linares, who by all accounts could star in our major leagues. It's Cuba versus the USA national team coming up on the Saturday Sports Showcase. July 26, 1953 is officially recognized as the beginning of the Cuban Revolution, and so parts of Havana are decked out in festive style as they begin a days-long celebration leading up to July 26, at which point Fidel Castro will address the nation in what is usually a lengthy speech in Revolution Square. Meanwhile, here we are at Estadio Latino Americano, a ballpark built in 1946, a ballpark where American players used to perform regularly in the 40s and 50s prior to the Revolution. A park that Team USA has visited in the past. Last year, they lost 5 straight games here to the very strong Cuban team. This season, it will be just 1 game, and then they'll take a day off tomorrow, and these two teams will travel to Millington, Tennessee, and play on U.S. turf on Monday and Tuesday. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Costas, along with former Mets manager Davey Johnson. Now, in 1987 and 88, in the Pan Am Games, in a 5-game series here, in the World Championships in Italy, the USA and Cuba played on nearly equal terms, but that was a very strong USA team pointing toward the Olympics. This is a group of underclassmen, many of whom will not be on the team that eventually competes in the Pan Am Games and the Olympics wearing the colors of the United States. So there's an aspect of men against boys here.
There's no doubt about it, Bobby. You know, this is a very experienced ball club, and I've been very interested to see how they play. I've played and managed in all the other Latin American countries, and this is a real treat for me. But this is a very strong amateur team, and I don't think any amateur team in baseball would, you know, even in America, our amateurs go into professional ranks. They don't have that here, and same in Japan, and they would be the toughest 2 competitors for this team.
Let's take a look at a couple of players, one from each side. Omar Linares, the third baseman for the Cuban squad, and everybody says that he could go right to the major leagues, not just be a prospect. He's 22.
Well, I really like him. He's got a cannon for an arm. He runs very well for a big guy. He's 5'10", weighs over 200 pounds. He hits the ball at all fields. You got to like this kid. He's got a great attitude, and he's got great skills.
Interesting story on the American side. George Fabregas, who plays at the University of Miami, is of Cuban descent. His parents left Cuba, came to Florida in the late 1950s. Last night, he carried a message to a cousin of his father's, a man his father had not seen or spoken to, I take it, for over 30 years. Carried that message to him last night. Says he's very excited to be playing here in the home country of his parents.
Well, he's a big kid, and he's a real happy kid, and he's happy to be here. Yesterday, you got a little rain during the workout, and they didn't get a whole lot in, but he's a big league prospect. He's playing third base today, but he'll probably end up behind the plate in the big leagues.
We'll take a look at all the players, and also during the course of the broadcast, give you some sense of history, flashing back to some of the great Cuban players who have performed in the major leagues, and some American stars of big league baseball who used to play winter baseball in this area. We'll do it all when we come back, right after this.
Brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft, cold filtered for real draft taste, so tap into the cold. By today's truck, Chevrolet, nobody's winning like the heartbeat of America. By Zest Deodorant Bar, you're not fully clean unless you're zestfully clean. And by AT&T, the right choice.
Coach of the USA team, and I've got today's lineup for you. Leading off is Damon Mayshore, our center fielder, who's a guy that needs to set the table for us. Outstanding speed. Hitting the number 2 slot, playing in left field is Jim Austin. The guy can bunt, hit, and run, move a guy over, do the things a number 2 hitter needs to do. Our number number 3 hitter is David McCarty, who's playing first base today, who can also play outfield. A guy that's hit in many clutch situations, also our leading hitter at this point in time. Our 4th hitter is George Fabregas. George is playing third base, but also can catch and play first base. Another guy that's been a leading hitter for us this summer, done a great job. Hitting in our 5th slot is Darren Bragg in right field, who has come on the last 3 weeks, hitting the ball really well, leading our team in home runs. Hitting in our 6th spot is Joe Ciccarella. Joe is DHing for us, but also can play first base and DH. Left-handed hitters really hit the ball well for us this summer. Hitting our 7th spot is Chris Gomez. Chris is playing second, but he also can play shortstop. Really come on the last 2 weeks, hit some big home runs for us lately, really playing well. Roger Burnett, our shortstop, is hitting 8th for us. An outstanding glove that can run, play defense, and do the things you expect a big league shortstop to do. Hitting 9th is Troy Tallman. Troy's an outstanding defensive catcher who can really throw, and a guy that we're looking for his leadership. We expect to use quite a few pitchers today to give him some different looks. And our starting pitcher today, Mike Hostetler, who throws about 85 with a good curveball, good slider, good straight change. Hopefully that combination will get it done for us today.
And Hostetler will be opposed, at least initially, by a 27-year-old right-hander named Lazaro Valle. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. The record you see there is the combined total between the provincial series. There are 18 provincial teams who play November to January in Cuba, and then they pare it down to a select series of 8 teams comprised of all-stars from those provincial teams. They play from February to April. So that's the combined statistics between those 2 lengthy series of games, and after that's all over with, they select the national team, which in effect is an all-star team. Omar Linares at third base and Luis Ulacia, the shortstop, comprise a very strong left side of the infield defensively. Here is Damon Mayshore to lead it off out of the University of Arizona. And a fastball from the pitcher Orlanzador for ball 1. The home plate umpire is Randy Crystal, an American umpire, well known in collegiate ranks. He filled in 1984 in the Major League playoffs during the brief umpire strike. A bouncing ball to the right side. Pacheco from the outfield grass whirls and throws him out.
Bobby, he's got outstanding skills, that Pacheco. He's a key guy in this ball game. He hits second in the lineup, and certainly the shortstop and he'll set the table for Ramirez. And they got some boppers coming up behind him, but he's got a lot of tools.
Mixed bag for traditionalists, as you can see. Natural surface, no AstroTurf here, but the dreaded aluminum bat used in collegiate and international competition, so that ping when contact is made instead of the old standby crack. Breaking ball is low to Jim Austin, the left fielder. Plays for the Sun Devils of Arizona State. The 3 umps on the bases are Cubans, and the American umpire behind the plate. Fastball is high.
Probably this guy's got a real good arm. He's got a major league arm. He's throwing around about 89, 90 miles an hour. You tell me he's got good breaking stuff, and he's a major league prospect.
One difference I noted right away on the scoreboard, they list the strikes first and the balls or bolas second. So if you were reading it that way, the count would now be 1-2 for the Cubans, but 2-1 in our terminology.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, it's one thing's different here in the international competition. Most of there's a lot of play at home plate, and there's usually ends up early in the ball game to be 2 big holes, and I think that's something new for a lot of the American hitters. They really don't have the opportunity to really place their back foot and their front foot where they really would like.
3 balls and a strike to Austin, who was drafted by Kansas City out of high school, decided to turn their offer down and play at Arizona State. The Americans are 15-6 in 21 international games. And Austin's aboard with a walk. 4 of their 6 defeats came in Japan. They managed to win 1 while losing 4 in a series there. After the 2 games against the Cubans in Tennessee, both these squads go to the Goodwill Games and then eventually the World Championships in Edmonton, Canada. There's Jim Morris, the coach at Georgia Tech. He's got his pitching coach, Rick Jones, along with him as well. And the other coaches are John Anderson of the University of Minnesota, coaching at third, and the very successful Augie Garrido, now of Illinois, on the lines at first. Won the College World Series a couple of times at Cal State Fullerton.
The skipper was telling me he'd love to put something on real early to get these guys thinking very aggressive. He might put a hit and run on here and try to get something on the board real quick, give these guys a boost.
It might surprise American viewers to learn that most observers do not think the Cubans play an aggressive style. They kind of play the laid-back sort of wait for the big inning approach that Earl Weaver favored with your Baltimore Orioles. They don't hit and run that much. They don't steal bases.
Well, that would surprise me. I saw this game the other night, about 4 innings, the first night we got here, and I was impressed with they hit the ball the opposite way and up the middle, and they showed a lot of bat control. I'd be really surprised if they don't hit and run more in this kind of contest.
And since they're not used to defensing against that, since all their games prior to the beginning of international competition for them have been against competition within their own country, since they're not used to defensing against it, Jim Morris plans to move base runners, play a little hit and run, and see if he can catch them in an unfamiliar situation. The one-strike pitch to McCarty. Oh, he threw a good fastball by him. Very late with the swing.
He certainly did, but this guy, the big guy, hard throwers a lot of times are very slow to the plate. Oh, that is a hard slider. About a 85-mile-an-hour slider.
Tight, late-breaking slider, if there was one. Darted at the last minute. McCarty is from Stanford. He's been swinging a hot bat of late. In an 0-2 hole, and outside and low. Give you an idea of how dominant the Cubans have been. They have won 18 world championships. The Americans have won only one. That came in 1974. They have won the last 5 Pan Am championships since the American team prevailed in 1967.
Well, they certainly have a lot of talent, Bobby, but if they had a professional team here, they wouldn't be near as dominant. Puerto Rico has a lot of great players. Venezuela, they turn out a lot of good pros, and they come and end up playing in the big leagues, and I've played with a lot of them. And the same way in Japan. But this is certainly a fine disciplined ball club. This catcher doesn't throw real good either, and with this slow delivery to home plate, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts him.
Sergio Borges, the one-time boy manager, began managing the national team at the age of 19 some years ago. 2-2. And there goes the runner. Swing and a miss for the strikeout. And the throw is in time. It was not a strong throw, but Austin did not get a particularly good break, so it's a strikeout throwout. Rodriguez's throw didn't have a lot of steam on it, but in time, Austin's gone, and so are we. We'll come back with the bottom of the first from Havana after this. Cuban lineup: Luis Ulacia at shortstop. The team captain, Antonio Pacheco, is the second baseman. Their best player, Omar Linares, at third. The DH is the cleanup man, Orestes Kindelan. Lourdes Gurrial is in right field. Javier Mendez in left. Juan Millan, the first baseman. The catcher, or rector, Pedro Rodriguez. The veteran center fielder, Victor Mesa. And Valle, the pitcher, playing with the designated hitter rule. And running up to bunt is Ulacia, but Hostetler fields it and throws him out. How much more difficult do you suppose it is to bunt effectively with an aluminum bat?
Well, he got a lot of wood on that. I think with a wood bat, he'd have killed it, but you're going to see this guy doing that a lot. He's, I think, the #2 best player on their ball club. He does a lot of things to get on base and a lot of things to annoy pitchers. And, he's not the dominant player that their third baseman is, but he's awfully good.
They have another shortstop named Herman Mesa, no relation to the center fielder Victor, who is said to be an Ozzie Smith type at short.
I tell you,
Maybe overstatement.
That is an overstatement. I saw him working out, and he's a little jittery out there. He puts a lot of hot dog on it. He puts a lot of mustard on the hot dog, too, and he's certainly got a lot of skills. He's very quick. He's a right-hand hitter. He's small. He's going to be a pesky-type hitter, steal bases.
Hostetler's pitch. is popped up behind second base. Chris Gomez out, and coming in from right field, Darren Bragg to make the catch. So 2 quick outs. Let's take a look at Mike Hostetler, the pitcher. He'll be entering his junior year at Georgia Tech, so he pitches for the head coach of the USA team, Jim Morris. 6'2", 195, 20 years old. That's his record in international competition. He was 12-4 for the Yellow Jackets in ACC competition in 1990. He throws a late darting slider. He's a location pitcher. His best fastball only around in the mid-80s. Throws that circle change favored by so many big leaguers. And here is Linares.
Skipper was telling me about him. He said that one reason he was going with him, he had some guys that had a little bit better stuff and a little better big league potential, but this guy he didn't feel would be moved by the crowd in any way. He had a lot of intestinal fortitude.
Well, he was the winning pitcher in Taiwan in an international tournament last fall with 40,000 in the stands. So he has a little bit of experience in situations like this, although obviously this is unique. Not that many Americans have set foot in Cuba, and the Cuban team is the best amateur squad year in, year out in the world, but something similar to this has been experienced by Hostetler. Got it in on the hands of Linares, and a swing and a miss.
That's where he's going to have to pitch most of these hitters, and they're very selective, and they won't go at that inside pitch. They make him throw it over the plate. But this guy reminds you a little bit of Chico Simone, Julio Franco, and maybe Dick Allen, kind of the combination of all three of them.
The way he's got that bat slightly tilted toward the pitcher, his hands down.
His hands down, the barrel kind of facing the pitcher, and his hands low, but he knows what to do with that barrel, and basically goes up the middle and the other way, and he can go out of the ballpark at any place. 2 outs, nobody on, the 2-2 pitch. A roller to second base. Gomez up with it. Strong start for Hostetler. He retires the Cubans in order in the last half of the first. No score after 1 at Estadio Latino Americano. Giving you a look at some of the famous Cuban players who performed in the major leagues. Minnie Minoso, who is making noises about making a 1-game appearance for the White Sox this year, so we can say he played in the majors in 6 decades. Began in the late 40s with the Sox on that American League Championship team of 1959. Tremendously popular, of course, in the United States, Davey, and as we talk to some of the veteran observers of Cuban baseball, he remains one of the most popular players in the history of Cuba. Well, you know, he's typical of a player that really loves to play the game, and he expresses it on the field, and everybody that came across Minnie Minoso loves Minnie Minoso, no doubt about it. I was kind of surprised that they feel that he was the best, most popular player over here.
Well, of course, there were others. But the advantage that the players who performed in the 40s and 50s in the major leagues have in terms of popularity in their homeland is that they played in both places. A kid like Tony Oliva, who got out on his brother's passport, or a Bert Campaneris and Tito Fuentes, who left the Cuban national team when they were playing in Costa Rica in 1961, shortly after the revolution, and then never came back home for years and years because of uncertain circumstances. Those players are less vivid in memory for Cubans. Fabregas lofts one to center field, and here is Mesa, who makes the catch. His nickname on this ball club is El Loco. But when you ask him about it, he tries to downplay it because using nicknames is discouraged here because they feel it takes away from the collective aspect of the team and puts too much of the spotlight on the individual.
Well, he's talked about wanting to play in the big leagues because he'd like to face Valenzuela. He knows he can tear up Valenzuela. And he's a very confident young man. He's not a young man. He's about 33 years old. An actor as well as a pretty good ball player.
Darren Bragg from Georgia Tech takes a ball. Yeah, he's appeared in a couple of motion pictures, not clinics, not films, instructional films about baseball, but baseball movies with a dramatic theme. Cuba's answer to Bull Durham or Field of Dreams, and he's been the star.
That's why they call him probably El Loco.
You know, when I asked Linares about possibly playing, there's Mesa in center, and he does showboat a little bit.
Boy, howdy.
When I asked Linares about playing in the major leagues, he just flashed a soft smile and didn't want to commit himself. He said, no, I really have no interest in that. I'd rather perform for the Cuban national team. However, when I asked Mesa about Cuban players in the majors, he quoted Jose Canseco's contract to the dollar. So there's a certain amount of awareness about it.
I think everybody in the world knows what Canseco's making.
And he'll happily tell you if you don't know.
It's true.
2 and 2.
I think he could hit one completely out of the stadium. I was talking to one of the announcers for the Cuban network, and he was telling me that the only person that he remembers back in the old International League, I think the last year was in '59, was Luke Easter hit one clean out of this ballpark.
One out, nobody on. Lázaro Valles, 2-2 pitch to Darren Bragg. Struck him out. And that's his second strikeout of the ballgame. Hasn't been a hit yet for either team.
That was a tough pitch to lay off. He established the fastball on Bragg, and then he came in with him on a hard slider down and in, and that's a tough pitch to lay off.
So Bragg sits down, and up steps Joe Ciccarella, the designated hitter, who plays for Loyola Marymount during the regular college season. He was a third-round pick of the Phillies coming out of high school in 1988.
Yeah, we asked him about that, and he said, not enough money.
It's pretty clear that a lot of college coaches are disturbed about the recent trend of offering huge dollars to high school players. That's out of play. The Todd Van Poppel situation with Oakland, the best example. He tells everybody, I'm not coming out. He's clearly the best prospect. Atlanta with the #1 pick and others selecting after them bypass him. Oakland takes him in the middle of the draft. There's the ball coming back, not for the reason that they throw the ball back at Wrigley Field because it was hit by the opposition, but simply because baseballs are in short supply. So even if a Cuban player were to hit one into the stands, 99 times out of 100, it comes back.
And he's cleaning it up.
Anyway, a lot of the college coaches are disturbed when a kid like Van Poppel is offered a guaranteed contract for better than $1 million spread over 3 or 4 years. Obviously, they're concerned about the drain on available talent for collegiate teams. In on his fist, a roller that gets by Valle. Pacheco charges and got him at first on a good play.
Great play.
So Pacheco has turned in 2 good plays already. We'll ask Davey Johnson about the relationship between the majors and the colleges when we come back. Most of the seats in the lower grandstand are filled, but the outfield seats only very sparsely populated. Generally, when the USA has played here in the past, the crowds have exceeded 40,000 and sometimes been in the vicinity of a 55,000 sellout. So in all honesty, this would have to be called a somewhat disappointing crowd. One mitigating factor, every other Saturday is a work day in Cuba, and this is that every other Saturday. Hostetler starts the bottom of the second by getting one in on the hands of the very dangerous Orestes Kindelan, who pops out to Gomez at second base. Kindelan has the highest home run percentage of any player in the modern history of Cuban baseball. He has hit one about every 11 at-bats, and that's a Ruthian clip. He hit a dozen in the Pan Am Series in Indianapolis in 1987. But he's retired that time on a pop to second.
Well, Mike made an awfully good pitch right in on his hands, first pitch, and like I was talking to him yesterday, you're going to have to crowd these guys. You're going to have to use that inside part of the plate, or they're going to, you know, the alleys are only 345 feet, and they're using aluminum bats. You've got to definitely pitch in to be successful.
325 down the lines, 400 to dead center. This hitter is the right fielder, Lourdes Gurriel, who hit 2 home runs off Jim Abbott in 1987 during international competition. The summer series between the two teams stands at 16-5 in favor of Cuba. In '87 here, they won the first 2 of a 5-game series. Then Jim Abbott beat them and became something of a national hero in Game 3. The Americans also won the 4th before losing the rubber game. Then they split 2 games in the Pan Am Series as Gurriel draws a 1-out walk, the first Cuban base runner.
I can't tell if they're clapping for the next hitter or for the first guy to get on.
Well, every time the crowd stirs, we look out of our booth considering the possibility that Fidel Castro may be showing up. El Presidente was not here at the start of the game. He is, as you know, a rabid baseball fan. They held out some hope he would attend midway through.
I think one of the things that created this crowd to jump up and start clapping is this is a hometown boy, I guess, and maybe they wanted to give him a warm reception.
A look at the aficionados. One strike the count to Javier Mendez. The runner is going. Here comes the throw. It's up the line, and he's in there. The throw sailed toward first base. And Gurriel has the steal.
I didn't think we were going to see them running too much. He had a good pitch to throw the guy out on, but threw it up the line a little bit high. Guy beat the throw. They're going to be aggressive. I'm surprised. The game I saw the other day, even when they had runners in scoring position, they didn't really let the hitter swing 3-0 though.
1-1 to Mendez with one out and a man in scoring position. And there's a called strike. Just to finish the thought about the head-to-head competition. 16-5 Cuba in the Summer Series. They split 2 in the Pan Am Games in Indianapolis in '87. Then in the World Championships prior to the Olympics, played in Italy in 1988. The Cubans twice rallied in the 9th to erase American leads and win both games against Team USA. That one's in the dirt, and a good play by the catcher Troy Tallman. The Americans had 3-1 and 9-6 leads in Italy entering the 9th inning and lost 4-3 and 10-9. Extremely strong American contingents then, especially in terms of pitching, with Jim Abbott on the squad. And
well, isn't the philosophy now to get the freshmen and sophomores so that they be...
Here's a liner in there for a hit. The Cubans are going to take the lead. It's dug out of the corner by Bragg, but in with a double is Mendez as Gurriel scores. 1-0 Cuba.
Looked like he jumped all over a curveball there and just nailed it down the right field line.
He hung the curva. Here is Mian, the first baseman. And a called strike. Let's look at the pitch that Mendez got a hold of.
Yeah, it's a big curveball, and it came back over the inside part of the plate, and he did what you're supposed to do with it. Right with it.
Leans in. Roll it to second base, and these Cuban fans are reacting every time one of their hitters makes contact. Gomez, who's been busy in the first 2 innings, throws the hitter out with the runner Mendez advancing to third with 2 down.
Well, there's definitely, you can feel the tension in the air here. Talking to some of the Cuban players, they're very. It's a big game for them. First time on television. Everybody has high expectations for this Cuban team, and I tell you what, I know something about playing when the expectations are high.
A strike to Pedro Rodriguez as the broadcast moves along. We'll talk to Davey about his old club, the Mets, get his reaction to the Whitey Herzog situation in St. Louis and other items going around the big leagues as well as here in Havana. Good stop by Tallman to prevent the wild pitch.
Yeah, that's an outstanding play. That saved him a run right there. That hit way out in front of him. That's textbook blocking the ball right there.
Tallman looking in to Rick Jones, the pitching coach, for the sign. But Jones lets the pitcher shake it off if he wants to. He says only about a half dozen times a game will we use the lock-in signal where the pitcher is not free to shake it off.
Well, I was telling the skipper yesterday, and he said one thing.
A liner that is by the diving shortstop. And it brings home the second Cuban run.
That was another hanging breaking ball. He's got a lot of life on his fastball. And I was telling him yesterday, these guys can hit the breaking ball. They don't stride very much. They're very patient hitters. I hate to see him hang a breaking ball with a runner in scoring position.
When you talk to these Cuban players, they have specific recollections of facing the excellent American pitching that Team USA was able to throw against them in '87 and '88. The Chris Carpenters, the Greg Olsons, Ben McDonald, Jim Abbott. Those guys were upperclassmen, players bound for the big leagues. Here you've got kids that have just completed their freshman and sophomore years in many cases, and on paper they appear overmatched.
Well, you know, it's that fulfilled potential against unfulfilled potential. And certainly 2 years of playing baseball and on these major college levels where they got about 85 games and whatever, and then in international competition, they end up getting about 50 or 60 games. So these guys can use the experience. But I think they're going about it right because these guys will be ready for the, what is it, a year from now? What is that?
The Pan Am Games, which will be held right here,
yeah,
in Havana. And the Cubans will not only be favored in that on their home turf, trying to make it 6 in a row. That's Joey Hamilton in the bullpen, said to be the hardest thrower on the team, a junior from Georgia Southern. But they plan to send a team to Barcelona. There's never been a Cuban baseball team that has competed in the Olympics. Obviously, it has only recently become an Olympic sport, and they boycotted in both '84 and '88. Well, they will be there in '92.
It's going to definitely take an experienced, college-type player to compete against these guys. The potential on the American team is there, but certainly not the experience. And these guys don't beat themselves very often. And the American team is going to have their work cut out for them next year and in the Olympics against this club.
A ball and 2 strikes to the 32-year-old Victor Mesa. 2 runs home in the second. Hit toward the hole, and that's through. Their 3rd hit of the inning to go with a walk.
Oh, Victor, he was looking for the ball in. He's been in these competitions a lot, and he probably knows what more to expect from an American pitcher that throws pretty hard than probably anybody else out there.
Reports of American baseball are not carried on official Cuban television or radio. He was able to muscle that through, even though the pitch was inside on him.
It's a very good swing. All these guys have really level swings. They don't stride much. You'll see the younger American players have a little more of an uppercut. More experienced players realize that a level swing is the best way to make contact and hit for average.
Rick Jones, the pitching coach, is going to the mound. We'll see if he plans to make a change or just try and impart a word of advice to Hostetler. Talking to these Cuban players the last couple of days, Davey, you kind of got the impression that they are more aware of American baseball than they might be comfortable letting on. They might not get a steady diet of it, but through exchange of tapes, the occasional game seen off the satellite, if there's a location where they're privileged enough to have a satellite dish and bring American games in, they have seen at least some American players. And perhaps because of the presence of Jose Canseco, who is not the only player of Cuban descent in the majors. There's Rafael Palmeiro, there's Danny Tartabull, whose father Jose came out of Cuba to play in the major leagues a generation earlier, but certainly Canseco is the most famous player of Cuban descent in the majors. Perhaps because of that, these players tend to focus on the Oakland A's, and you hear Ricky Henderson's name mentioned frequently. They enjoy his flair for the dramatic. That appeals to the Cuban players.
Well, I'm sure they've seen a lot of American tapes and videotapes on players, base stealing. They remind me a lot about the way they go about business, the way the Japanese do. They're very studious of the game.
Here is Ulacio with a drive to right center field, but it's tucked away out there by Mayshore, the center fielder. They strand 2, but score 2. And after 2, 2-0 Cuba. Had to use his older brother's passport to come out of Cuba in the early 1960s. Won back-to-back batting titles his first 2 years in the major leagues, 64 and 65 with the Twins, then added a third later on, and had he not had a series of injuries, in all likelihood, would have made the Hall of Fame. He was in that group of Cuban players who came to the bigs in the 1960s, including Luis Tiant and Tony Perez, Jose Cardenal, Bert Campaneris, Tito Fuentes. Among those who had arrived earlier, Minnie Minoso, Camilo Pascual, Zoilo Versailles, Mike Cuellar, Pedro Ramos, Cookie Rojas, Sandy Amoros, who made the World Series saving catch for the Dodgers in 1955.
I tell you, Tony Oliva was a great hitter. I played a lot against him when I was at Baltimore. We finally just gave up quit trying to pitch to him. We just tried to throw it right down the middle and maybe confuse him, because if we throw him up and in, he'd hit it down the left field line. Throw him rolling away, he might hit it down the right field line. And great hitter. So we just started throwing it right down the middle to him, try to confuse him.
I spoke to Tony, who celebrated his 50th birthday yesterday. Earlier this week, Gomez, the hitter, leading off in the third, and the Americans trailing 2-0. He told me he didn't see his parents from 1961 through 1970. He knew that was a chance he was taking when he came to the United States to try his hand against the best baseball competition in the world. And finally, he agreed to play winter ball in 1970 in Mexico if some well-placed people there could arrange for a visit by his parents from Cuba to Mexico. And there he saw them for the first time in almost a decade. When he first left Cuba, he had a younger brother who was only about 6 or 7 years old, Juan Carlos Oliva. And he didn't see him for 9 years until he finally saw him pitch in a tournament in Venezuela in 1972, by which time he was 17, a right-handed pitcher, and Oliva was fully convinced that had he been able to leave Cuba, he could have pitched in the major leagues.
Wow, that's a story there.
2-2 to Gomez, followed by Burnett, the shortstop, and Tallman, the catcher, in the third, and he's called out on strikes. The third K put in the scorebook by Lázaro Valle.
He's got great stuff, this guy's. He's got good control. There's that hard slider again. Out of the outside corner. He's not going to make many mistakes with his breaking ball. That was a problem the inning before.
You know, it was so poignant talking to Tony Oliva about that situation. He told me that when he walked out onto the field in Venezuela to watch the Cuban team warm up, he couldn't distinguish which one was his brother. Hit towards short, and he'll be retired 6-3 as Ulacia makes the play. So Roger Burnett is gone. He couldn't distinguish which one was his brother and had to ask and be introduced to his own brother, who had changed so much from the age of 6 or 7. It's difficult for all Latin players who come to the United States. You know, you're in the minor leagues in Charlotte or Knoxville someplace. It's difficult to order food. You're lonely, especially if there aren't many other Latin players on the team. But for the Cubans who came to the United States after the Revolution, there was that tremendous element of uncertainty. Would they ever see their family or friends again? What would they do in the off-season?
Well, that's a tough, it's hard for us to even imagine something like that happening.
Tony said his saddest day was always the last day of the season, the last weekend. He'd see the other players packing, and he'd say to himself, where am I headed to?
Still hit 360 whenever he wanted to.
I guess he could lose his troubles on the ball field.
He could be homesick and still hit 300.
Tallman, the catcher from Stanford, takes a fastball for a strike. There are 3 Stanford Cardinals in the starting lineup, 2 from Georgia Tech, and 2 more from Loyola Marymount.
They need somebody to bust one, hit a double or something. Get something going for these guys early on here.
Valle flashing the good fastball, or recta. Curve is curva. Knuckleball nu Dios. But some things are the same no matter where you go. In Cuba, a slider is a slider.
What are we getting on the kilometer gun here?
We'll check. 2-2 pitch, full count.
Well, I like this guy. They tell me he's their best pitcher. Not just most experienced, but best.
Pitched a 7-inning perfect game a couple of years ago in an international tournament against Korea and struck out 13 of the 21 he faced. That's his second walk. Tallman aboard with 2 out here in the third, and the Cubans leading 2-0.
Tallman did the right thing there. He took that pitch because there was nothing he could do with it. That was at 89 and right on the knees on the outside part of the plate.
An American fan in the distinct minority here in Havana. One thing about the Cuban fans, though, they don't really get on the opposition. They will obviously cheer more wildly for the exploits of their own team, but they are very appreciative when the opposition turns in a good performance. And Jim Abbott is the perfect example for that. He received standing ovation after standing ovation when he pitched here in '87, and they still revere his name in Cuba.
Well, that was a great moment. I think all of us I saw that, and I think the big play was the first play of the ball game, wasn't it? When he fielded that butt. That was the thing that electrified a lot of us at home that hadn't seen Jim Abbott pitch too, and I guess that won their hearts right there.
1 strike to count to Damon Mayshore, the center fielder. He grounded to second his first time up, and that one is outside. Mayshore's father, Clyde Mayshore, was a big leaguer, played for the Reds in '69 and the Expos from 1970 through '73. He was an outfielder, like this kid.
He's got some pop. You know, he's gonna have to go with this guy. Looks like he's gonna come in on him here, though. You know, you're taught in the big leagues, the catchers are taught not to move until real late, just about before the guy delivers the ball. He moved way too early there.
A ball and a strike, runner not going, big chopper. Here comes Linares, and he can't field it. Infield hit.
That's the break they needed right there. Baltimore chop, and there's the good hands, and he got to the ball, but just couldn't make the play. It looks to me like he almost overruns the play here. Well, that's a tough play. You got to come and make it. You got to catch it and throw it in one motion if you're going to get anybody.
Looked like he got an awkward angle on the ball.
Yeah, he did.
Okay, so here's the left fielder, Jim Austin, with runners at first and second and 2 out. Austin walked his first time up. You know, we've been talking a lot about the American pitchers especially trying to get inside on the Cuban hitters, but this is a point of constant debate when professional scouts try to evaluate collegiate or international talent. Because of the use of aluminum bats, you can throw a good pitch in on somebody's hands and he can still muscle it through, as Mesa did for the Cubans an inning ago on a good pitch on the inside portion, but he still pulled it through the hole between short and third.
I guess you have to go by the ping sound. If it's real high, then it's out on the end of the bat, but if it's a little lower ping, it means he would have busted his bat and it'd probably been an out. That's dangerous with aluminum bat. At 345, you know, you have to have some intestinal fortitude to come in on a guy.
The 1-0 pitch is low.
I might be getting a little tired here.
Very warm, temperature approaching the mid-90s.
I don't think so much, you know, the number of pitches is going to make him tired, but I think there's a lot of tension on these guys. This is a real big game. They know it's televised, and they want it real bad. They're expected to win. They're expected to win easy.
2-0 the count. A walk and an infield single have given the Americans a chance here in the third. They trail 2-0.
Probably that hard slider.
There it is on the inside edge. You know, a lot of big league scouts are dismayed about the way pitchers are developing in college because of the aluminum bat, because they're discouraged from throwing that good pitch inside, working inside, and then discouraging the hitter from leaning over the plate so you can work him with the breaking stuff on the outside edge. Work the hitter in and out. There's less incentive to do it if you can throw a good pitch that would ordinarily break a guy's bat at the big league level, but he gets the liner over the infield because he's using the aluminum bat. And a lot of big league people feel you've got to teach a kid how to pitch all over again, no matter how good his arm is when he comes to the majors.
Well, I would like to see him go back to the wood bat, at least in college. You know, I can understand in other amateur ball leagues because of the economics of it and the bats.
There's a drive to right. Does it get over the right fielder's head? He turns the wrong way. It bounces against the fence. They may score the tying run. They will. Both runners will score on a double by Jim Austin, and Team USA has tied it at 2.
That was a good piece of hitting right there. He went with a fastball out over the plate and drove it to the base of the ball. That's outstanding. That's just what they needed right there.
The right fielder, Gurriel, had some trouble with it.
That's definitely not textbook Major League style. That's That's a minor league move right there. He broke the wrong way, and really, we call that drifting. He didn't break and run back to the wall.
So Valle was cruising, and all of a sudden the game is tied. The rally started with 2 outs and nobody on. And strike one now to McCarty. You know, you would think, considering all the money that Major League Baseball throws around, some of it well spent and some of it going in million-dollar quantities to players who perform in very disappointing fashion. You look at guys who are released and still have to be paid $1 million or more a year for the balance of their contracts. You would think that the big leagues could subsidize college ball and provide wooden bats. Since economics is really the crux of the issue, why not just say, okay, boys, you're providing a lot of talent for us, much more than in past generations. A very high percentage of Major League players have played at least some college ball now, which wasn't the case 20, 25 years ago. Here's a supply of wooden bats.
I thought maybe that what they do is help subsidize them and maybe cut back on their minor league teams instead of adding to them. But I think that, you know, with the more revenues that these ball clubs are making, I think there's 2 reasons now why they're signing more guys and giving them more money. I think one of the things is that they have more money to go out and sign people. The other reason is probably that they really feel now that the best way to develop a strong organization and a good organization and be successful on the Major League level is to develop a strong minor league system. And the only way that you can do that is through drafting and signing a lot of your prospects and a lot of your draft choices.
Do the college guys have a legitimate beef when a Van Poppel gets guaranteed money and is taken away from the college game?
Well, they certainly do, but, you know, this is the professional aspect of baseball. I signed after 2 years of college at Texas A&M, and I know that they may have to go out and get another shortstop. You know, you can't always have the insurance like you do in the professional ranks. If somebody gets hurt, you have somebody who can move up and take his place. But I know they're going to... They've shown it the last couple of years. They're giving more money to third and fourth picks, and I think you're going to see that continue because that's really the way to build a strong organization and be a contender for a long time. I think the free agent market is going to get worse and worse.
2-2 the count. McCarty trying to snap the tie, but he fans for the second time. Tosses the helmet away in disgust. Valle out of the inning, but the Americans have tied it after 2.5. This is a look inside La Borreguita del Madeo, which was a favorite haunt of Ernest Hemingway's. Take a look at the inscription above the Hemingway autograph. It says, I get my margaritas here, but I get my daiquiris at El Floridita. That's a different place. Apparently, La Borreguita del Madeo was also a favorite haunt of Errol Flynn. There are pictures on the wall of Jimmy Durante and Carmen Miranda, among others.
I think Ernest knew what he wanted and where he wanted. This is a pretty good place to come and fish and write stories about the sea, too.
Well, of course, the Hemingway classic, The Old Man and the Sea, inspired by his time spent in Cuba, and his last novel, Islands in the Stream, about wartime goings-on in the Caribbean, written at least in part while he was spending his time in the home he had here in Cuba. This is Joey Hamilton out of Georgia Southern, the new pitcher. The Hemingway home is maintained as a cultural site by the Cuban government, exactly as it was when he last resided here over 30 years ago.
Bobby, I think they were a little concerned about Joey last time out, or last time out he was all right, but before that he had a little bit of a tender arm, and they really didn't want to rush him, take any chances with him. He's a tremendous prospect. He's probably going to be a first-round pick, and he's definitely got a live Major League arm. It's probably about a 6 or 7 fastball. He's 89 to 92, and he's got a good curveball.
So that, for scouts' purposes, is 6 or 7. Whoever got a 9 or a 10 coming out of college? Clemens a 10?
Probably. Dwight would be, I'd say Dwight was 89 to 92 right out of high school.
Mm-hmm. Here's a look at Hamilton's motion.
He's got good mechanics. I mean, it's solid. You know, there's nothing. He's not throwing across his body. He's not a Tom Seaver using that driving off that back leg. You know, squat and drive.
A fastball for a strike to Linares. His nickname is El Nino, the kid, the youngest player ever to make the senior national team at 17 5 years ago.
This guy's got some talent. We got him last time on a ground ball to second, but you got to be careful this way.
Pacheco aboard with a walk, and that one's in there for strike 2. As Davey said, they're concerned about Hamilton's tender elbow. He's junked the slider for all intents and purposes because you don't want to put strain on the elbow, at least for the time being. He missed 3 weeks. He led all of Division I with 18 victories for Georgia Southern last year as a sophomore.
Well, these guys nowadays in college, boy, I mean, they pitch an awful lot, and they pitch, I'm surprised that after a college season, any of them can come back and get their arm back in shape to pitch.
He throws the attempted pickoff away, and Pacheco moves down to second.
Well, all good ball clubs, as soon as somebody jumps up and has an inning to tie you, it looks like they're going to come right back at you. He just plain throws that one away. Threw it about 90 miles an hour to the first baseman.
So an RBI opportunity for Linares. A lefty and a righty throwing in the bullpen now for Team USA.
Joey wants to talk with the catcher here. I imagine he's a little bit unsure of whether he should go right after him right now or try to make a pitcher's pitch. For this young man, I don't think you want to just waste a pitch. You want to make a pitcher's pitch. I'd say a good spot right now would be to run the ball in on him again. I doubt if he's going to give himself up here to try to move the guy over to third.
He's down in the count 0-2, though. And that one's low and away. The left-hander in the bullpen is JoJo Smith from Vanderbilt. And the right-hander is Arkansas's Doug Bennett.
He gives him a ball on the outside part of the plate. This young man will drive the ball to right field. You can bet on that.
And it's fouled back. Holding at 1-2. Steve Horn up here in the booth tells us that there is no radar gun in operation at the ball game today. I was surprised yesterday as I stood with you in the dugout as a torrential downpour hit midway through the Team USA workout that they have no tarpaulin. For a natural surface field, it drains very well because it was coming down in buckets, and there literally were puddles on the infield at about this time yesterday, and within hours it had drained well, and the field was more than playable.
That's why they don't have tarps here in most Latin American countries. They don't have tarps. The ground's going to soak up the water. You know, yesterday it was a river. It was running right into the dugout, and they have drains there. It drained off, and like I say, they were 40 minutes later they were playing, having batting practice on take the ground ball.
It bounces away. Pacheco will take a chance, and he'll make it on the wild pitch to third base. So the team captain is at third with nobody out.
That's a tough play right there. Talman's done a good job back there. Breaking ball, he hits that far out in front. It's just almost impossible. That hit him on the left shoulder, and he was lucky he even got a part of that one.
So in the category of understatement, Hamilton's having control problems. A walk, a wild pickoff, and then a wild pitch. A man at third now, and a bouncer to third that skips away. Fabregas couldn't make the play, and Linares very aggressively goes all the way to second, ahead of the throw from the left fielder Jim Austin.
He's a big guy. You know, that's a tough play for the third baseman there. He hits that short hop to third baseman. This infield is not the greatest infield. It's not major league caliber. Some of the major college caliber type infield. It's a little bit hard and crusty. That was a tough play. I like to see the aggressiveness though on it. And to hit it. As soon as he gets by him, he doesn't hesitate at first.
Should the shortstop have chased that ball down? It barely hit on the edge of the outfield grass.
He's trying to get over there and back him up, but that ball, you know, hit off his knee and went way into left field.
If Fabregas had handled it cleanly, the runner would have held at third. As it is, a run has come home. And the Cubans have the lead again at 3-2. This is Orestes Kindelan at the plate. A throw in behind at second, but not nearly in time. A walk, a wild pickoff, a wild pitch, and an error by the third baseman produce a Cuban run in the third. Big swing and a miss.
He's certainly gotten away with that one. He hung a curveball, this guy, and it's lucky it's still in the ballpark. He knew what he wanted to do with that pitch. That curveball was almost too much of a hanger, too much inside. Joey here needs an out. He needs somebody to make a play for him.
And a tapper foul. 1-2. Davey, your old club, the Mets, now a game and a half back of the Pirates in the National League East. And I know you're still close with Buddy Harrelson. You've talked with him. You have to feel ambivalently. You root for your old friends there, but of course you're not a part of it any longer, and they've taken off.
Well, I'm still a part of it. You know, I've been in that organization 10 years, and a lot of those guys I've had a long time, and I certainly wish them well. And you know, basically the coaching staff was there when I was there, so I wish them all well.
Big chopper that produces a run. A base hit for Kindelan. The first hit of the inning, the second run, and it's 4-2 Cuba as Linares scores from second base.
That's that Baltimore chop. This ground, with all the rain it had yesterday, is still awfully hard. Third baseman had no chance there. Boom. Or Astro. Maybe they ought to rename that to the AstroTurf chop.
An ugly inning for the American squad. Here's Gurriel, the right fielder, who walked and stole a base in the two-run second inning for Cuba, on the outside corner for a strike. Last year, when the Cubans won 5 straight in this ballpark from Team USA, 3 of the 5 games ended early because of the mercy rule. If after 5 innings in international competition, squaring to bunt and fouling it off, if there's a deficit of more than 10 runs after 5 innings, the game is called off. But the mercy rule has been waived for this ball game. It'll go a complete 9 no matter the score.
I'll tell you one thing. He did a good job getting the bat on that ball. If he hadn't, I think he'd been wearing that baseball.
The 2-strike pitch. He lays off. They check down at first, but the answer is no. He didn't go around.
Needs a double play ball right here. Make a pitch.
Bouncing ball. Fabregas toward the line. It's a fair ball. Throw across the diamond in time with the help of a good stretch by McCarty at first base.
It's another chop. That's a good play by Fabregas. He needed to get his glove on one and throw somebody out. You know, you hate to boot one, but he felt probably on that other ball he should at least knock it down.
In fairness to Fabregas, his best position is probably catcher, and that's where he thinks he'll ultimately play if he's ever to make it to the big leagues.
Well, I was watching him take some ground balls. For a big guy, he's got pretty soft hands, and he's got an accurate throwing arm. I think the reason that you'd probably want to move him is probably his speed and probably his quickness, his foot speed. Although, you know, Brooks Robinson wasn't too fast. He did all right over there.
Brooks was as quick as a cat, and on the bases about as slow as a mule.
That's him.
A ball and a strike to Mendez, who doubled home the game's first run in the second inning. Do you feel a sense of relief to some extent, being away from baseball, being able to take a little bit of a break?
Well, you know, I don't know what a normal life is like, and I've been basically leading a fairly normal life. You know, not going to the ballpark every day and not working 7 days a week and not traveling and staying in strange hotels. And Managing in New York is not the easiest thing. Managing in the big leagues is not the easiest thing, but you can compound that with being in New York and all the expectations that are built up over the New York Mets. And, you know, we're to blame. We won a lot of ball games and raised a lot of people's hopes up. This young man right here, the Cuban manager, he's got, you know, I haven't seen him smiling a whole lot. You know, he's real worried. He's expected to win, and he better win.
There's the walk on the 3-1 pitch. So the trouble continues for Hamilton here in the third with 2 runs already home. So I gather you could feel the reduction of stress within a week or two just being away.
Oh, no question about it. Just 1 week later, I felt, you know, like the burden had been lifted off my shoulders. You know, the last month or so in New York was very difficult for me. I tried not to show it, but I'm sure I probably did. And you're kind of relieved when the axe finally does fall. You feel it's going to fall. I think, you know, the writing was on the wall at the end of last year when there was some mix-up about whether I was going to be back or not. So, you know, I think it really helped the ball club to get that out of the way and move on to better things. And certainly Buddy's done a great job, and I hope he gets a lot of credit.
Rick Jones, the pitching coach, headed for the mound. Obviously, the Mets had personnel too good to continue to play as they were playing under you. So had you remained, the performance would have improved at least somewhat. But how much do you think the change contributed, if only because a change of atmosphere was needed?
Well, I think it's very important to give Buddy a lot of credit. Anytime, you know, a lot of clubs respond to a different regime, I think it cleared the air and the uncertainty, and it had to be done, you know. And then the uncertainty was created. I did my part in creating it.
We'll continue with Davey Johnson when we come back. A pitching change for Team USA. Hamilton out. In comes Doug Bennett from Arkansas. Our thanks to Gail Gardner for the update from the States. Here, 4-2 Cuba. Both American errors have been made in this 2-run Cuban third inning. And in comes right-hander Doug Bennett, 6'2", 175. A 20-year-old entering his junior year at Arkansas. He's a native of Springfield, Missouri. Throws a big breaking curve, classic curveball, to go with a fastball that approaches 90 miles an hour. He'll try to hold the Cubans in check. Only 1 out. The batter is the first baseman, Millan, who grounded to second his first time up.
I was talking to him yesterday, too, and I said I didn't appreciate him beating the Aggies, the Texas A&M Aggies. I went there for a couple of years, and we had rivalries with Arkansas, and big rivalry with Texas, of course.
Dave, would you like to manage again?
There's no doubt about it. I want to manage again, and, you know, I hope I'll get the opportunity. I'm looking forward to another challenge.
The 1-0 pitch spun him away. Let's see if he went around trying to get away from the pitch, and he did. A ball and a strike. From a distance, as you get some perspective. We'll get a perspective on what Millan was facing here. He was just ducking for his life, but jerked the bat around for the strike.
That's the way to come in on a hitter. Now you can go away with him.
1-1 pitch. Breaking ball cut on and missed. Now that you have some perspective, what, if anything, would you have done differently?
Well, you know, everything I really do, I'm kind of premeditated about it. You know, you go by, you ask a lot of people questions. You ask your coaches a lot of questions. You know, talk to people on the ball club about, you know, things you might do, like, are you going to play Jeffries at second or third? And there's a lot of people that have all the answers. You know, you're going to get a lot of help from a lot of people, but you have to end up making a decision what's going to be best for the personality that you have there, and also for the future of the New York Mets. I really can't think of anything I'd have done differently. You know, you mean what should I had Ojeda in the rotation from the start and Darling in the bullpen, or some other arrangement, or maybe David Cohn because maybe his arm wasn't ready. I mean, those things. You plan them out at the time, and you go with your instincts, and you go with. I got good baseball people there. You know, Mel Stottlemyre, Buddy Harrelson, and you use their baseball instincts, and then you make decisions. And you can't look back, and you can't second guess. If you do, you'll be going crazy.
Bennett threw a good high fastball by Millan for strike 1, and now he's ahead 0-1 against the catcher Rodriguez, who had a base hit his first time up. That one's down low. Speaking of going crazy, the Cuban team has a team psychologist, just like the Mets did. Think it's a good idea, or would you advise Sergio Borges and the Cuban officials to bag that idea?
Well, a lot of the Olympic teams have psychologists that help them deal, with certain things. Like I know the cyclists, they have psychologists that talk to them about how to deal with the pain when it gets unbearable and you're trying to get that last bit of effort to get to the finish line. I think it's good. They're probably more like a father figure. People go to them and can talk about their troubles. I know Dr. Lanz, everybody, he's been around so much with New York. He's kind of like a father figure, and you feel like you can come to him with any problem you might have, and so I think that's healthy.
Doesn't interfere with the authority of the manager or undermine him?
Sometimes you learn about things that you don't necessarily need to know. I mean, at times, but you have to have definite rules about what the responsibilities for on all your staff.
There's the 2-1 pitch. Boy, did he make the catcher's glove pop with that one. He's throwing very hard.
Yeah, he's got that sneaky fastball. He's got that nice easy motion and a good pop right at the end, and he's got a little tailing fastball that runs in on the hitter. And like I say, he's establishing that inside, and then you can go away.
2 balls, 2 strikes, 2 outs, 2 on, and 2 runs home. Full count.
Tried to overthrow that pitch. Another thing, too, these guys are probably used to a higher mound. I went out and stood on that mound, and that mound is very flat. It almost feels like your front foot is landing uphill. So it's a major adjustment for an over-the-top fastball pitcher. He's really got to slow his motion down to get his arm through, because he's not getting any help at all from the mound.
Runners will go on 3 and 2, and it's fouled off. It's a heck of a thing, Davey, when we sit and ask you, would you do anything differently? You're talking about having won a world championship, plus a division title, and all those other years where you won more than 90, but the Mets had good personnel, and they were in the media capital, so the expectations were extremely high.
Well, I think what you want to do when any job you take as a manager, you want to, make decisions. Early on in '84, I had a lot of decisions I had to make about the personnel. We had the middle of the diamond, the catching situation. A lot of the pitching was up in the air. But you make decisions, and hopefully you eliminate decisions that you have to make in the future, or somebody else that comes behind you in case you get fired after your first year, second year. When you leave, you want it to be stronger than it was while you were there.
So you have peace of mind that you accomplished that much?
I feel that I did that, and I don't look back on any decisions I made, and I think that it's better now than it was definitely, before I got there.
Here's another 3-2 pitch. That's going to drop for a base hit into right center. A run scores. The throw comes home, and the trailing runner stops at third. So 3 runs in the inning, and it's now 5-2 Cuba on the RBI hit by Pedro Rodriguez, the catcher.
That's good hitting. He just went with a pitch. He didn't try to pull the ball. A lot of these guys hit like that. I mean, you don't see them pulling off the ball and trying to pull it. Even when the ball is beating them inside, it's a breaking ball down, and he hits it right where you should, right center.
Spoiled a couple of 3-2 pitches before lacing the curveball to right center for the RBI hit. I wonder if we can get a shot of the scene alongside the Cuban dugout. This is like Major League Baseball in the 30s, when a photographer would run right up to home plate and snap a picture of Babe Ruth touching the dish at the All-Star game, or scenes out of The Natural where the flashbulbs were going off in Robert Redford's face.
I don't think Doug Harvey would allow that.
There are the shutterbugs right on the field of play.
They have their own little roped-off area, but none of them seem to want to stay in there.
1 strike to Mesa, the center fielder. A drive to left center, but Austin had him played well. Let's see if he can run it down. No, he can't. It's up against the fence. 1 run home. Here comes another as Rodriguez scores. And the Cubans are threatening to bust it open in the last half of the third. They've scored 5 and lead 7-2.
Well, that's too bad. It's Mesa again. He's been in international competition a lot, and he knows the Americans very well. He's looking for a fastball in the inside part, and he looks like he's trying to pull it in. And he does.
Austin had him played toward left center, and I thought maybe he had a chance to run it down, but the ball kept carrying to the base of the wall. A strike to Alacia, the shortstop, who's 0 for 2. JoJo Smith gets back up. The Vanderbilt left-hander.
You know, with only 8 pitchers on your staff, I think that's what the U.S. club has, about 8 pitchers. You really, they have a game on Monday and Tuesday. Is that what it is back in Tennessee?
Right, in Millington, Tennessee, against the Cubans.
Well, this Cuban club can put a hurting on your bullpen in a hurry.
Checks a swing, and the count goes to 2-1. After those 2 games in Tennessee, both the Cubans and the Americans head for Seattle in the Goodwill games, and it's very possible they would meet there in either the semifinals or the finals. But for America, the first scheduled game is against the Soviet Union, and they're in their baseball infancy. Bouncing ball, Gomez charges at second, plays it cleanly, and finally they're out of the inning. But the Cubans send 9 men to the plate. They score 5 times with the help of 2 American errors, and they lead again 7-2. Victor Mesa has a single and a double in this game. He's the veteran at age 30. We asked him yesterday about the 2 baseball movies he's appeared in Cuba.
No soy héroe, lo que soy un...
I'm not really a hero. He says I'm just a ball player and an athlete. And yes, I've been selected for 2 movies about baseball, but I'm not anything special. I'm just a baseball player and an artist.
Well, they may not consider themselves, at least for public consumption, anything special, but they are treated like heroes, these top Cuban players. Most of them are either students or in some way involved in baseball as coaches or instructors when they are not playing. There are a few who have jobs as engineers or other professional positions within Cuban society, but most of them have better year-round circumstances, as you would expect, than most of their countrymen.
Well, baseball's got to be the only sport here, and unless they play, I think they play a little bit of soccer and maybe some basketball and throw some hoops up, but I don't think they have anything organized. Certainly, I guess they play year-round. The weather's got to be great here, and so it's a great place to develop major league talent. The Latin American countries have always put a lot of superstars in the big leagues, and I wonder how many Hall of Famers are in from Cuba.
Of course, no avenue to the big leagues at present, and not since the early 1960s, really. This is Fabregas, who, if you're just joining us and missed the opening segment of the broadcast, we'll tell you he is of Cuban descent. His parents came out of here. They were not married at the time. His father came out in 1957, his mom in 59, and they subsequently met and married.
Jim was telling me he's been playing exceptionally well. I know he'd like nothing more than to get a hold of one right here and get him closer to him.
2-2 to Fabregas, who flied to center his first time up. When you drive or walk through the streets in Havana, you'll see groups of school children kicking a soccer ball around, the occasional basketball, but as you say, it's baseball that is far and away the #1 sport. As you look out at the vista beyond the grandstand, that's the old Capitol building that is now a Hall of Science connected with the University of Havana.
It does look like the Capitol in Washington, yeah, from a distance.
And in fact, that was the model, as you might suspect.
See if he comes right in there, too.
They check at third base, and the Cuban umpire punches him out, provided they can get the throw there in time. Cuban up at third base said he went around. The pitch would have been ball 4. He couldn't check his swing. The ball slithered away from the catcher, so they had to make the throw to first base. Now, look, Fabregas, if he'd realized and had bolted out of the batter's box and run hard, he would have made it, but he thought it was ball 4.
He actually looked like he picked it up back there. He looked right at it, but he didn't see anything. And then finally, we probably heard the on-deck hitter yelling at him, and he took off too late. They did that just like the big leagues would call it. The home plate umpire, instead of asking for an appeal from the dugout, the home plate umpire immediately looked at third, and he called it right away.
Darren Bragg tries to drop a bunt, but it rolls foul. 5 strikeouts now for Lázaro Valle, who has been in there all the way for the Cubans. Now, you mentioned Cuban sports interests. Javier Sotomayor, of course, holds the world high jump record. The great runner Alberto Wantarina has had tremendous success in track. Teofilo Stevenson, Olympic boxer, took the heavyweight gold some years ago in boxing. So they've known success in other sports, but baseball is by far the national passion.
I'll tell you, by watching them work out, they remind me a lot of the Japanese teams. They're very disciplined, and when they first come out on the ball field, they line up in rows of 3. They have somebody leading them in calisthenics. I imagine he's just there to lead them in their conditioning program. They really take an intense infield. I was amazed. It looked like they had about 4 balls going. It was worse than in Japan. Outfielders throw to every base, second, third, and home. And during the infield yesterday, they had 6 throws to each base. And while all this is going on, they're even having fundamental drills for the pitchers in the outfield.
Good fastball, cut on and missed by Bragg. 2-2. Sergio Borges, the manager, had an opportunity to spend some time in Orlando, Florida in the early 1980s. And he said that Joe Morgan made quite an impression on him. This was during spring training time, and came into contact with big league players. Joe Morgan. Phil Niekro was another. And he enjoyed watching Nolan Ryan pitch, as all of us do. Those were the 3 names he recalled most vividly. I wonder if those are a pack of baseball cards?
It might be Topps baseball cards.
It's a pack of baseball cards.
Maybe he's scouting them back there. What was his position? Was he an outfielder?
I believe Borges was an infielder. Here's the 2-2 pitch. On the inside edge, let's see. Well, the plate umpire, Crystal, was looking around as if to check for help from the base umpire, but there was no swing, so he's got to make that call himself, and now he's acknowledging that he was late in doing so. See, look at him. He is indecisive there for a moment. Called it ball 3, and now there's the walk as Valle misses with the payoff pitch. Before the game, out on the field, the players from the teams exchange gifts, and I'm not exactly sure what the Cubans gave the Americans, but Topps is an official USA sponsor, and the USA team gives American baseball cards, Topps bubblegum cards, to their opponents in each international competition. So Borges pockets a couple of packs.
Wonder if they have card shows over here.
If you do, you better report that income, and you better turn it over.
Everybody wants chiclets over here, though.
Yeah, little kids on the street. They stop you and ask you for some gum. He goes the opposite way, and Ciccarella has a base hit. Bragg stops at second. Admission to the ballpark, by the way, is absolutely free. It's just on a first-come, first-seated basis. This park was built in 1946 by Bobby Maduro and then remodeled in 1971. Maduro ultimately was the owner of the Havana Sugar Kings, who played in the International League. They were a farm team of the Cincinnati Reds. As a matter of fact, Preston Gomez, who went on to manage in the big leagues and is still in the California Angels organization, was the last manager of the Sugar Kings and met the Minneapolis Millers, then managed by Gene Mauch, in the Little World Series between the International League and the American Association in 1959.
I know when I was in... excuse me, Bobby. I know when I was in the International League, I was playing with a lot of the old-timers. I played with Luke Easter, Joe Pignatano, and Altobelli and all those guys, and they talked about how good baseball was down here. And I guess last year, I think I said it was in '59, but they really like coming here.
Bobby Maduro was very hopeful of landing a major league franchise. Of course, this is in the 50s when hopes were high. Landing a major league franchise for Havana. And Branch Rickey, for one, was of the opinion that big league ball could succeed in Cuba. In fact, a Cuban player almost became the guy to break the color line. There was a power-hitting shortstop named Silvio Garcia, and Leo DeRocher had seen him play and sent back glowing reports to Rickey. This was in 1941. World War II followed. The plans were put on the back burner. Garcia wound up in the Cuban Army. His skills faded, and then immediately after the war in 1946, they signed Jackie Robinson, and Jackie came to the bigs a year later in '47. But it might have been Garcia.
Sweet Leo.
That sweet said genuinely or sarcastically?
Well, he was, when I was in Atlanta and hit those 43 home runs, it was toward the end of the year, and I remember him coming up the cage and getting on me about bandbox, and I'll never do it again. And I said something to him like, Leo, you'll be lucky if you're managing ever again. And it just so happens, I don't know how, but their pitcher ended up drilling me right in the back. Just had that feeling that Leo had something to do with it.
Hey,
somewhere along the line.
Nice guys finish last.
That's what they say.
A ball and 2 strikes to Gomez. The Americans have 2 men on with 1 out. Top half of the 4th at Estadio Latinoamericano in Havana. The Cuban team got 2 in the 2nd. Americans tied it with 2 in the top of the 3rd. But the Cubans got 5 in the bottom half and lead now 7-2.
They need a hit by Gomez here.
2 balls and 2 strikes. We mentioned many of the Cuban players like Oliva and Perez and Tiant and Camilo Pascual and Minnie Minoso, who performed in the major leagues. Cuba was a haven for American players as far as winter ball was concerned in the 40s and 50s. Valle's 2-2 pitch coming to Gomez. Breaking ball hit toward the hole, and it's by him for a base hit. And Linares did not break especially quickly to his left to make that play.
No, he didn't. It looked like he almost froze before he went after it. The ball wasn't hit that hard.
We don't mean to be critical, and this kid obviously is a superstar here, and big league scouts have told us that he could play in the major leagues, and we have no reason to doubt it.
Well, you grade somebody's skills. He didn't have a crossover step there. He looked like his first step should have been toward the ball to his left, and he just kind of froze there and then started after.
He shuffled.
Yeah. But he certainly, you grade a player by his skills. A scout will come in and grade his arm strength just by looking at him. They can time him down the line. And he's above average in all those categories.
So Gomez picks up an RBI with the hit through the hole. Jorge Valdez is throwing.
You know, it was a little mix-up yesterday. He came out and told Jim Morris that left-hander Valdez was going to pitch, right before their workout. Their workout was at 3, and the Cuban team worked out at 10 o'clock in the morning. But that changed 2 or 3 times. And they tell me that's normal in international competition. Nobody ever wants to say who's pitching for sure. They want to keep the other team in doubt.
Cubans are extremely secretive. We didn't even get their starting lineup until about 20 minutes before the game. Valle has thrown 64 pitches. Borges sticks with him for the time being. Roger Burnett will be entering his junior year at Stanford in the fall. He takes a strike. He's a product of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Another good shortstop that came from there. I think he played for the Dodgers. Mr. Russell, isn't he from Broken Bow, Oklahoma? Something like that. Close.
Steve Horn's going to check. I don't want to commit myself one way or the other. There's a fastball for a strike, 0-2.
This young man here, this shortstop, has got awfully good tools. He's got plenty of talent. He's got a good chance to make it to the big leagues.
Burnett in an 0-2 hole. Valle sets and brings it home and misses with it. From everything we've been told, conditions here for visiting players, we're not talking about the overall conditions in society under Fulgencio Batista, the dictator who preceded Fidel Castro, but certainly for visiting ball players, conditions here were idyllic. This was the jewel of winter baseball. Here's the 1-2, and he got him with a called third strike, the 6th strikeout for Valle. You know, players who often were earning only about $800 a month as they came out of the minors in the early 50s would come to Cuba, get about $1,000 a month, be able to rent an apartment complete with security guard and maid for about $150, and you avoided all the terrible travel usually associated with winter ball on those rickety buses because there were only 4 teams in the Cuban Winter League, and they all played here in this stadium. And then all 4 teams would play every Sunday. There would be a doubleheader. So you'd lie around the beach all day or play golf as you could then. You can't now. No golf courses here now. But you'd enjoy yourself all day long, then come to the park and play before very appreciative fans.
Sounds good to me. I played winter ball in '64 in Venezuela with Louis Aparicio, and then I played in '67 in Puerto Rico. And you know, you needed that. In '67 was after my first year in the big leagues, but I went to winter ball. My salary in '66 was, I think, $6,500 a year. So it was big money, and to make in the off season. I think that in the off season at that time, I think they paid about $600 a month.
0-1 pitch to Tallman. Fastball a bit high. Well, as you mentioned, Luke Easter played here, the legendary power hitter. Max Lanier, Sal Magley, Willie Mays for one season, Don Newcomb, Junior Gilliam, Ken Boyer, Don Zimmer, Rocky Nelson. Tommy Lasorda was very popular here, as was Chuck Connors, the rifleman.
For his baseball prowess, Chuck played here, and his acting ability off the field.
Well, it might have been both. At present, there are only 2 regular television stations in Cuba. One of them picks up, at least irregularly, American programming. Movies with subtitles, usually with the English left in. Spanish is not dubbed in. They prefer the subtitles, and that has helped much of the population to become bilingual. At least passably so.
That's a good...
Tallman watches a called third strike, so Valle strikes out the last 2. He has 7 in the game and leads 7-3.
Now, when life turns up the heat,
still photographs of Fidel Castro. This is around 1964, and he's pitching in an exhibition game. Appears to be a submariner, a la Dan Quisenberry or Ted Abernathy.
How old was he then?
He had to be approaching 40 then, 38, 39.
You may drop down when that arm gets a little tired. Too many pitches, too many sliders.
You know, Don Hoke, the late infielder, third baseman for the Pirates at one time with the club that won the World Championship in 1960, played winter ball down here and tells a story about a time in 1950 or 51. He told the story to Myron Cope, the Pittsburgh area writer and broadcaster, about a time when a group of students from the University of Havana, leftist students, staged an impromptu demonstration, and apparently that wasn't unheard of at the ball games, even with Batista in attendance, and I guess he tolerated it as a minor annoyance, and occasionally these demonstrations would break out in the middle of the ball game. And here comes several students, Castro among them, right out onto the field, and they stage their little demonstration, and then Castro goes to the mound and elbows the regular pitcher aside and insists that the next batter stand in and face him. And that next batter happened to be Hoke, who, according to Don's account, was able to foul off several pitches and then line a base hit to center before Castro relinquished the mound.
That's quite a story there. I'm glad I wasn't here and I wasn't the hitter.
We're into the last half of the 4th. It's 7-3 in favor of the Cuban squad. The second baseman, Antonio Pacheco, the hitter. The count 2-1 to him. He's flied to right. and walked, and that walk started the 5-run third inning.
Good-looking ball player. Good size.
Fouls it off. He's shown us something in the field, ranging to his left and back to the outfield grass, and also coming in to field a nubber very cleanly. Apparently, Fidel Castro was scouted. He wasn't a serious big league prospect, but he was scouted by Joe Cambria, who was a well-known scout in this area and something of a pipeline for Cuban talent to the Senator organization. Dolph Luque, an early Cuban major leaguer who won nearly 200 games, primarily for the Cincinnati Reds in the 20s and 30s, was a scout for a long time for the Giants. Mike Gonzalez, a Cuban player who played in the majors, scouted for the Cardinals and apparently contributed something to the baseball vocabulary when he scouted a player somewhere in Latin America, I'm not sure if it was in Cuba, and sent back a wire to Branch Rickey about the player's prowess, and the wire simply said, "Good field, no hit," in Gonzalez's broken English. Good field, no hit. And now, that's standard. That's the way you express it if a guy can wield the leather but not the stick. Here's a chopper, and it's off the glove of the diving shortstop. He wouldn't know how to play anyway, but here's Pacheco racing it into a double, and that's the way it's going to have to be scored. You can't give an error on that play.
It's got to be a double. He tried to get down real low and make the play on it, and he was going to get a short hop. I don't like to see the short hop, the guy get down on his knees to make that play, because even if he catches it, he's going to have a difficult time getting up and throwing the guy out.
So Roger Burnett couldn't handle it at short, and Pacheco never hesitated. Steams around first, and there he goes.
They won't make too many mistakes. They have too much experience. They've been out there too long, and they know what can happen in a ball game.
A strike on the inside corner to Omar Linares, who has the highest career batting average in modern Cuban baseball history. He's a .365 lifetime hitter in Cuban competition.
He wants to hit one bad.
This is his season average, the combination of provincial play and the select series from which they finally put together the national squad. Breaking ball down and in, 2 balls and a strike. After Linares hits, we're going to go to Gail Gardner in New York for an update, we understand, on the Reds-Phillies game.
Better be careful right here. Moving that fastball right over the plate.
Three and one. Doug Bennett, the Arkansas right-hander, is the pitcher for Team USA at the moment. The third they've used. Mike Hostetler of Georgia Tech was the starter. Joey Hamilton of Georgia Southern followed him, and now Bennett. We're just in the fourth. And there's the walk to Linares, who doesn't appear to be terribly happy about it. He wanted a chance to hack. We step aside. Here's Gail in New York.
Thank you, Bob. At Riverfront, the Reds and the Phils in first place.
All right, the cleanup man and designated hitter Orestes Kindelan steps in. He's popped to second and had an RBI single. A called strike, in contrast to Linares, who holds that bat loosely and with the barrel sort of pointed toward the pitcher in the fashion of a Richie Allen, or not quite as extremely as Julio Franco of the Rangers, who wraps the bat all the way around his head. In contrast, Kindelan has that bat straight up and down and close to the body.
Got that wide stance and not going to take much of a stride. See that stride? And his feet are very soft. Mechanically, they're very sound. They don't make many mistakes. You see very few guys that will get up on the plate and step in the bucket and whale.
I'm doing this as a favor, Davey, to cut down on the volume of mail to both you and me from people in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Steve Horn tells us Bill Russell is from Pittsburgh, Kansas, not Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Didn't know there was a Pittsburgh in Kansas.
As a matter of fact, it's the home of the Pittsburgh State Gorillas. One of your great college nicknames.
Wow.
The Gorillas of Pittsburgh State.
Mickey Mantle was from Broken Arrow. How about that one? Am I getting warmer?
Warm, but
He's from
not
Oklahoma.
hot. He's from Commerce. Or Spavinaw. I guess he lived in both those towns. So much for the travel log. Here's the 2-1 pitch. And a called strike, 2-2.
Need a ground ball double play here. What they need desperately.
Two men on, nobody out. Cubans trying to add to a 7-3 lead in the last half of the fourth.
Almost put a hurting on that one there.
He was almost on it. Watch again as he fouls it back to the screen. He didn't miss it by much.
It's a hanging curveball again. And wow. I don't think the stadium would have held that one. The American pitchers have made mistakes with curveballs, and that's one thing with hitters that are very patient and don't take too big a stride. They're going to whale on.
Another 2-2 pitch. Here's a drive toward the gap in left center that may get out, and goodbye. Kindelan, the greatest home run hitter in Cuban history in terms of frequency, not total, but 1 every 11 at-bats, hit a laser beam over the wall in left center. A line drive home run that had almost no arc to it. Boy, is this ball scorched. Watch it.
It's a fastball out over the plate, and he just nailed it. There was no doubt about that one. He knew it. Classic swing. He was saying right there, right out over the plate, right there.
Boy, there are some things that are universal.
They're universal language, boy. Fastball right out over the plate. See, extending his arms on him. You got to crowd these guys, and you can't leave the curveball out over the plate either.
Team USA goes to the bullpen, and we go to a commercial with the Cubans up by 7. The home run by Orestes Kindelan chases Doug Bennett. And trying to put an end to the carnage, in comes JoJo Smith, a left-hander out of Vanderbilt. We told you that Kindelan has hit more home runs per time at bat than any Cuban player in modern history. The home run leader in terms of raw totals is a first baseman named Antonio Munoz, who has 366. He was on the national team until recently, did not make the national squad this time around, although they tell us he's still playing, and he's in his early 40s, so he still plays on one of the provincial teams.
Do they go back when they are they talking from 1960 on or before that?
I'm sure those are stats post-revolution.
Okay.
Lourdes Gurriel, the right fielder, has walked and grounded out. JoJo Smith, the Vanderbilt Commodore, on the mound for the Americans, a relative rarity, because he's a left-hander who throws a nasty split finger pitch. The split finger is all over baseball, but the overwhelming majority of the time it's thrown by a right-hander.
And you don't see a lot of college players throwing the split finger, I wouldn't think, because that's awful. It takes a wear and tear on their arm. And You hate to see young pitchers throw the split finger early. A lot of them in college now are using that circle change, or some of them call it the OK change.
3 balls and a strike, still nobody out. The inning opened with Pacheco's double, Linares walk. Kindelan sent them all home with a home run. That knocked Bennett out of the game. And now it's 3-1 to Gurriel. Hit hard, Burnett to his left, makes the pickup, whirling throw, got him.
Good play right there.
And listen to the crowd.
They appreciate good baseball. There's no doubt about that, and they'll reward them with applause. It's the way I like it that way. And they don't boo you when you make a bad play. That's ideal for a player.
And on the replay, you might have seen, not on the replay, on the live shot that preceded it, you might have seen the one Cuban fan wearing an Oakland A's hat. Saw a guy behind me wearing a Cardinals T-shirt.
Well, they're not all front runners then, right?
Some Yankee hats in the stands, too, and despite the Yankees' present troubles, because the Yankees were baseball's dominant team in the 40s and 50s, when information about American baseball was more freely available here, they are still very popular, especially among older Cuban baseball fans. They ask about the Yankees. When you give them the rundown, they look very sad. No more Mickey Mantle, no more Joe DiMaggio.
It is sad.
Javier Mendez, the hitter. And a strike, 2-1. What's your reaction to the Whitey Herzog resignation in St. Louis?
Well, you know, I was a little bit shocked. I knew, you know, the ball club was not playing like they're capable of playing, but it seemed like they did that every other year. So this was an even-numbered year, and they don't usually play well in even-numbered years. They play well in odd-numbered years. But I think Whitey just felt that they weren't responding to him, and he felt it would be the best thing for the organization. There's nothing worse. Whitey's a winner. There's nothing worse than going out there and losing and feeling like you're helpless to motivate them to do the things they're capable of doing. You know, if anybody could bottle the formula to make a hitter hit well under you, we'd all be geniuses. You know, certainly, you know, Darryl Strawberry, I felt he and I had a great relationship, and I felt he was one guy that could really carry a ball club. But and we had a great relationship for the last few years. I thought we were fairly close. But he and I know he wanted to play well and play well for me. But as soon as I was gone, he certainly started playing well. I think he was just overdue.
I know you've spoken with Bud Harrelson. Have any of your former players called you?
Not really, and I wouldn't really mention them if they did. But, you know, players, you have a lot of friendships on a ball club, but once you get traded, you really don't try to stay in touch, because if you try to stay in touch with everybody that was traded on your ball clubs, your phone bill would be horrendous.
Team not picking it up anymore after you're fired. No more expense account. Here's Burnett. Comes up belt high for it. Guns it across. And Smith comes out of the bullpen and sets down 3 in a row. But first, the Cubans score 3 more. Back after this from your item between the United States and Cuba. We'll find old Chevys, DeSotos, and Plymouths from the 50s, or in some cases even the late 40s, dotting the island. Most of them running now on Russian engines and parts, and the newer cars are sent in from Russia. Ladas look a little bit like Fiats. Here we go into the 5th. Valle with a 10-3 lead, and retiring the first man he faces as Damon Mayshore bounces out to short. Next weekend, make plans to be with us as NBC Sports Saturday Sports Showcase spotlights one of boxing's most dramatic spectacles. Ali versus Frazier 1, the historic 1971 bout at Madison Square Garden. Was it the greatest fight ever? Well, we'll find out in the next installment of the greatest fights ever on the Saturday Sports Showcase next weekend at 4 Eastern Time on NBC. Well, I'll never forget that night. I saw it on closed-circuit television. I was a freshman at Syracuse University, went to a theater up there to see it. The tension beforehand in the theater was overwhelming. You can imagine what it must have been at Madison Square Garden, because the fight had such sociological implications. In addition to being a matchup of two of the greatest heavyweight champions in modern history, Ali trying to return from exile, and many people felt that exile was unjust. The passions were running at an extremely high level, and we'll relive that next weekend on NBC.
That was a great fight. I saw that myself in closed circuit.
Frazier knocked him down in the 15th, won the decision, though some people thought that Ali was robbed. Jim Austin, the hitter, he's walked, and he doubled home 2 in the 3rd. High drive center field. Mesa going back. This one's really well hit. Mesa to the warning track for the catch in front of the fence. So Austin hit it nearly 400 feet, but Mesa ran it down.
Yeah, that was a pitch he should have been on a drive. It beat him a little bit, and he had to hit the center field, but that's a pitch you hit over the, get the head out, you hit it over the left center field wall. Looks to me like the wind is kind of coming in, so probably held it up a little bit. He probably hit it good enough he thought to get out.
That center field fence, which makes up the hitting background, was just repainted yesterday. The entire ballpark got a new coat of paint. Paint is very scarce on the island. It has to be imported. And the fronts of buildings everywhere, and buildings of all sorts, appear to be decaying. And certainly they're in need of a little sprucing up in terms of a paint job, which this ballpark got. But the classic old Spanish architecture, which you still see here, once private homes, now taken over, used for whatever governmental purposes, those buildings, at least from the exterior, appear to be in disrepair, if only because they haven't been painted in 30 years.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, that may have a little disrepair, but the majority of them, I think, is just a problem with touching it with paint. You know, in the United States, you really need to paint almost every 2 years, at least up north anyway.
Well, here there's no sugarcoating it. More than a bucket of paint is needed to bring these dwellings up to the sort of standard that most people in our audience would consider minimal. The old Havana was a cosmopolitan city. Drive to right toward the line and foul. A cosmopolitan city with outdoor nightclubs, legalized gambling, and legalized prostitution, for that matter. There was a large professional elite. Many of those people left Cuba in the early stages after the revolution. Some got their capital out, some did not. A larger percentage of that, at that time, of the total population resided in the outlying areas, farmers, peasants. And the average Cuban, who certainly is not in a position to speak freely, that should be stipulated, but the average Cuban will say that circumstances for the working man are better now than they were 30 or 35 years ago. However, you get a much different story from Cuban exiles in Florida, especially those from the professional class who had to relinquish their positions and leave the country.
Well, that was an interesting conversation we had with the chauffeur. He was talking about his wife being a school teacher, and that she made, I think he said, what was it? He said $260, or was it $280 a month, and he made $200 a month, but that his rent was, what was it? Was it $18 or $40? I forget now, but it was something very nominal. And the toughest thing was really the automobiles, because they were hard to get and they were expensive.
But of course, the literacy rate has jumped, and medical care is available across the board, as it was not to the lower classes earlier.
But there's not a whole lot of industry, and so everybody can't teach and drive cars. I mean, do they publish, a salary rate for, like, would they have it? Would that be public knowledge? Like they gave books on, I know we picked up some books about the literature here, about TV, the influence of TV and stuff like that in the United States here.
Here's a 2-out walk to David McCarty.
So would that be public knowledge? I mean, I guess everybody would know what you would make if you were... And then there's also levels. You get 3 levels in each of those occupations or something, levels of salary. I wonder if they do that on the ball field. I wonder if Linares is in the highest level. I imagine it would be. And then other guys are at different levels.
George Fabregas steps up, slices one to left, into foul ground, and a nice running catch by the Cuban left fielder, Javier Mendez, losing his cap in the process. They maintain the 7-run lead. Brooklyn Dodger fans will remember a left-handed Cuban left fielder racing toward the line to make a key catch in 1955, 7th game of the World Series. That was Sandy Amoros. Play wasn't identical, but it was a good one by Javier Mendez to put an end to that inning. We move on to the last half of the 5th. 10 runs on 8 hits, no errors for the Cubans. 3 runs, 4 hits, and 2 very costly errors for the Americans. You were posing a question just as the last inning ended. Technically, the Cuban players are not paid as baseball players. They perform for the country as amateurs. They're in amateur competition. But they have off-season
They have jobs, but they would still, if they play well, I imagine they get more rewards, wouldn't you think?
Sometimes they have jobs. In many cases, they're students or coaches, and you might guess that certain advantages, maybe not overwhelming, but certain edges might come to the better players. But if so, it would not be openly acknowledged. Here is Pedro Rodriguez, the catcher, who's 2 for 2, a pair of singles, and he bounces one up the middle. He's got 3 base hits. He has learned well from the early teachings of his provincial hitting coach, a legendary Cuban first baseman named Chicotin Cabrera. I was asking many of the Cuban baseball officials about Cabrera when I first arrived because I'd heard stories about him from American players, particularly Tommy Lasorda. Apparently, there was a legendary fight here in the 1950s. Cabrera was playing first base for Havana, and Lasorda was a very successful pitcher for the Amandares Club. And the fans of each team were extremely vocal, very, very rabid. In fact, they would wear colors corresponding to their affiliation. The Havana fans dressed in red, the Amandares fans dressed in blue, and Cabrera and Lasorda had a running feud going, jawing at one another, hurling insults on the field and from the dugouts.
That doesn't sound like Tommy.
Nah, not at all. And apparently Lasorda really, as the runner takes off and Mesa goes the opposite way for a base hit, and they'll have runners at the corners with nobody out as they continue to pour it on in the 5th. And Mesa, making the most of this showcase, is 3 for 3 with a couple of singles and a double.
That's really a big gamble, though, hit and run when you're up 7 runs. But that was good hitting on Mesa's part. Got a fastball, knew the runner was going.
Jim Morris, to be candid, kind of expected this. He knows his team is overmatched by Borges' squad. Last year, when the Americans played 5 here, they had to invoke the mercy rule 3 times. The American squad will be stronger by the Pan Am Games and certainly by the Olympics in 1992.
I'm talking to Jim, I was surprised because I figured this was a kind of lead up to the Goodwill Games and the games in Canada. And this game wouldn't really be that important. But he said he felt more pressured coming into this game from certain people because of it.
Well, the game's on television back to the States. That means a lot to the American players. Here's the pinch hitter, Herman Mesa, the backup shortstop, who was hitting for Ulacia, who started at short and went 0 for 3. 2 on, nobody out. That one will fade foul. So anyway, Lasorda's really getting under Cabrera's skin. And Cabrera comes up to bat. Huge crowd. They're waving banners and hooting and hollering, whistling. And Lasorda drills Cabrera right in the ribs. And here comes